Hey everyone, Andrew Meet Rich here, and today we've got a lot to unpack. Britain's Prime Minister just made what might be the most humiliating phone call of his career, and I mean that literally. We'll talk about why British holidays are suddenly caught in the crossfire of a war thousands of miles away. There's a proposal in Parliament that could completely redefine what counts as taking someone's life. On the American side, a senator just said the quiet part out loud about why this war is really happening, and the G7 is considering something that hasn't been done in history, dumping a third of the world's oil reserves at once. But trust me, I've saved the most powerful story for the very end. If you find any of this valuable, take a second to hit like and subscribe. It genuinely helps more people find this channel. And if you'd like to go a step further, consider sponsoring us or using super thanks. We put real hours into research and fact-checking because the last thing this world needs is more fake news. Now, let's get into it. So let's start with what might be the most cringe-inducing diplomatic moment of the year. Britain's Prime Minister called the American president this week. Sounds routine, right? Except this call came after an entire week of the president publicly calling him, and I quote, useless and incompetent, and accusing him of humiliating Britain. The Daily Express ran with the headline, Incompetent PM Kills Special Relationship. The Guardian said he was desperately trying to save what's left of the Atlantic Alliance. And what did the Prime Minister do with this 20-minute phone call? He expressed, quote, heartfelt condolences over the tragic loss of American soldiers. After a week of being dragged through the mud by the most powerful man in the world, his response was essentially to apologize, to call and offer sympathy to the man whose fist just met his jaw. And here's where it gets even messier. The former Prime Minister, the one who took Britain into Iraq, came out publicly saying the current PM should have backed America's war on Iran, which triggered an absolute revolt inside the Labour Party. One MP called his track record a catastrophe. The Daily Mirror's headline, From Iraq to Iran, have you learned nothing? And honestly, that's a fair question. But here's the deeper issue, and this is what I really want you to think about. This isn't just about one awkward phone call. It's about whether the so-called special relationship is anything more than a polite fiction at this point, whether Britain has any leverage left, or whether it's just going through the motions of an alliance that only works in one direction. Now, speaking of consequences landing on British doorsteps, here's something that hits differently. Your Easter holiday might be cancelled, not by your boss, not by the weather, but by Iranian drones. Flights to Cyprus, Dubai, and other popular destinations are at risk of being grounded for weeks, possibly months. The Times is reporting fears of acid rain after strikes hit oil storage facilities in Tehran. Energy bills in Britain are climbing because of disruptions in the Strait of Hormuz. And one tabloid captured the national mood perfectly. Nothing motivates the British public to care about Middle Eastern geopolitics quite like a cancelled flight to Kos. If you're still watching, I promise we're building towards something you won't expect at the end. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, an American senator did something unusual this week. He told the truth. He openly promised, and I'm paraphrasing only slightly, significant financial gains for the United States once the Iranian regime collapses. Access to oil fields, open markets for American investment. It was the kind of statement that usually stays behind closed doors, the kind of candor that makes the whole "this war is about security and democracy" narrative collapse in real time. Because if a senior lawmaker is publicly talking about profits before the conflict is even over, well, you don't need me to spell out what that suggests about the real motivations here. And the economic ripple effects aren't slowing down. The G7 finance ministers are now discussing a coordinated release of 300 to 400 million barrels from strategic oil reserves. That's roughly 30% of everything the world has stockpiled. It would be the largest coordinated release in history. The Financial Times reports that oil traders are warning about prices hitting $100 a barrel or more. And the American president's response to all of this, he called it, quote, a minor disruption. Think about that for a moment. When the world's 7 richest nations are sitting around a table seriously discussing whether to drain a third of their emergency fuel supply, the word minor doesn't really apply. This is the kind of measure you take when you're genuinely scared of what happens next. And what does it actually mean for ordinary people? It means higher prices at the pump, higher heating bills this winter, grocery costs climbing because everything moves by truck and ship, a global economy that was already wobbling now getting shoved hard toward the edge. Now, I told you I saved the most important story for last, and this one genuinely matters. Back in Britain, Parliament is about to debate something that could change how the justice system handles some of the most devastating cases imaginable. The Liberal Democrats are pushing for an amendment to the Crime and Policing Bill. Their proposal is straightforward. If someone ends their own life and there's a documented history of domestic abuse, police should automatically launch a full investigation, the same level they would use for a suspected taking of life, forensic teams, in-depth interviews, a complete review of digital communications, financial records, everything. Here's why this matters. In the last recorded year, 98 out of 262 domestic abuse-related losses of life in England and Wales were by the victim's own hand. That means more people were driven to that point by an abuser than were directly harmed by one. And for decades, these cases were treated as tragedies, not crimes. A note was found, the case was closed, and the person responsible for building that prison of despair walked away free. In Scotland, a man was recently convicted for the first time in a case like this, after his wife took her own life following 18 months of systematic abuse. The question is, if Labour has declared violence against women a national emergency, and the Prime Minister himself spent years as a lawyer fighting for exactly these victims, why is this proposal coming from the Liberal Democrats and not from the government? The cynical answer? Resources. About 100 new complex investigations a year would strain an already stretched police force. But when the alternative is letting abusers escape accountability for the outcomes of their actions, that calculation feels deeply wrong. Every like, every comment you leave, it does something real. It tells YouTube's algorithm that this video matters, that people should see it. And that means more eyes on stories like the one we just covered, stories that don't always make the front page, but absolutely should. If you believe in what we're doing here, and I know many of you do, consider subscribing if you haven't already. And for those who want to go further, sponsoring the channel or using Super Thanks directly helps us keep this work going. We're a small team, but we take every story seriously. The research, the fact-checking, the late nights making sure we're not adding to the noise, but cutting through it. Your support isn't charity, it's a partnership. It means you value independent, honest analysis in a world that desperately needs more of it. Drop a comment. Tell me what you think. Argue with me if you want. That conversation matters. And genuinely, thank you for being here. Thank you for watching until the end. This community keeps growing because of people like you.